So welcome once again to the big Premiership show, round 15. I'm going to do kind of summaries of each game this time rather than pure match reports to mix it up. And we've got some consequential wins behind Bath as they jostle for these playoff spots. Sale Sharks coming into form just at the right time. I thought Sale and Saracens were going to be similarly matched teams, but Sale really turned it on. That was impressive. And we had, Bath blowing away. Newcastle will come to that. Then another team that's coming into form at the right time, Leicester Tigers, a really good all-round performance, putting Harlequins in their place as Harlequins sink down this table. Northampton just pushing up a little bit and getting in their warm-up, if you like, for their Champions Cup semi-final. And then Gloucester, a record defeat of Exeter, who were completely hapless. And that means the table looks like this. Bath getting yet another win. They've got that home semi-final, no problems. Leicester solidifying their playoff spots, although, not completely solidified. They could drop out of it. Sale pushing up. We've got Bristol Bears slipping down, but still in the top four. Gloucester having a big performance. They're within 1 point. Saracens disappointing, but they're still in touching distance. Northampton Saints I don't think are going to make it, but just nip ahead there of Harlequins. And that bottom three I think really is reflective of the three worst sides in the Premiership: Harlequins, Exeter and Newcastle. And if you want to, of course, I still got the 45% off on testosterone testing kits from MANUAL. They're going down really well, so they're keeping that code going. RugbyAnalyst 45. Get involved. Plenty of you are. That is great. So, Sale 25, Saracens 7. The big takeaway here is Sale were on fire. They can be very physical, we know that. Their defence can be amazing. They've got plenty of big bashers in the team, but they seem to be mixing it together really nicely, all tied together by that man, George Ford, who had an absolute worldie. When you have him at 10, you can put together the power with some of the pace they've got out the back. It's a tasty prospect. Saracens should be able to do the same, but really couldn't and were made to look kind of substandard athletes at times. And of course, both teams started the round on 44 points, 4th and 5th. Both had their strongest team out, but Sale stomped Saracens. The first 40 was amazing. George Ford, absolutely brilliant. Looked pretty athletic, made a break as well. Just great decisions as always, but was making breaks and just on top of his game. Now, as good as Sale were in that first 40, they couldn't go on and get that bonus point. So that could be something that comes back and bites them. But still, you take that big win over Saracens. Saracens up front got physically outmatched, and then out wide, they got made to look a bit slow. The likes of Joe Carpenter, Tom Roebuck, Aaron Reid really made their opposite numbers look pretty slow, chasing back. Saracens were treading water at times. Mara Toje, Nick Tompkins, really slow getting back. Yet it's not over for Saracens, but maybe a sobering result to say you're not quite as good as you think you are, or certainly as you used to be. England and Lions watch, as we always do in these videos. Well, it was the George Ford masterclass. So he's obviously going to be going with England if he doesn't go with the Lions, but that is a big statement. Obviously, he's not in these Champions Cup games, so this is the best he can do. And Andy Farrell will watch it and think, wow, this guy is a master of his craft. Tom Roebuck is the real deal, big and strong, and Tom Willis, even in a losing cause, was a bit of a titan as well. Could he be in with a shout of a Lions spot? It would be a huge rise for him, but surely it's less likely, but he's a really solid player. Then let's talk about Bath 55, Newcastle 19. And Bath, they have this luxury of this guaranteed home semi, and they can kind of just move their players around, rest them. They rested some of their first choice forwards last week, still had them on the bench, but rested them to start, and then didn't start a load of their first choice backs this week, and it's worked out perfectly with 2 wins, and they actually win this game comfortably in the end, even though Newcastle had a pretty good first half actually. They had a stand-in fly half, did Bath, which is Kieran Donoghue. He can play all in the back three. Haven't seen a lot of him, but boy, is he quick, that is for sure. And he just ran past the Newcastle team for the first try. That was impressive. And those Bath second choice backs were really cutting Newcastle apart for a couple more tries. Emmons in particular looked pretty dangerous, and he actually got body checked for his troubles. It was a nasty double yellow card, their second yellow card for the Falcons just ahead of half time. But also it has to be said that the Bath backs defence wasn't as good as their attack, and they did get their numbers a couple of times wrong in midfield, and the centre Doherty went straight through. That was a bit painful for Bath. But then after half time, normal service was resumed as Bath just powered through. Just a good combination of pace, power, skill. They bring on the subs likes of Finn Russell, and it's just too much match for Newcastle, who don't have the quality of player. So good result for Bath. Newcastle, nothing from the game, unfortunately. Now, this was a really statement performance by Leicester Tigers. 40 points to 7. They'll love putting it over the pretty boys Harlequins, and they really put them in their place. And Tigers looked becoming more of a complete team at the right time of the season. In earlier rounds, I have been a little bit critical of Leicester, saying they are kind of one pace straight up and down without too much invention, but you could see it coming, and this is a game where it all came together and it really started to flow. It's a shame they're having to look for a new coach, to be fair, just as things are looking good. Jack Van Poortvliet is coming to the party. Finally, he's looking fit. He's playing the way we want to see him play for England, and he's making that case that I should be England's starting scrum half on the summer tour, and I think that is a good case. When he's playing like this, you can say absolutely. Harlequins got so many things wrong in this game once again. Cam Anderson just out of control, knocking himself out, taking Stewart out in the air, and he cops a red in the process. Andre Pollard maybe felt sorry for Quins as he gifted Northmore an interception try, so a little bit funny there. Andre Pollard's just really good at keeping it simple. When they're a player up, he just put width on the ball and give it to Adam Radwan. That's why Radwan moved to Leicester, to get the ball in his hands in an attacking position, and he shows he's simply the quickest, the best feet, the best acceleration we have in England. I think that is true, actually. Harlequins kind of just summed up in the end. Nathan Jabulu makes a late break, and it looks perfect as he slows down to allow newbie scrum half Murray to catch up for the 2-on-1. But after catching it, Murray just drops it a couple of strides later for no reason, just when things are going wrong, everything's going wrong, and Quins were an absolute disaster zone. They were going to lose this game. Fans need to ask some big questions about the coaching, the players, because it's just not good enough as they sink down this table. But like I said, JVP for the Tigers was fantastic, and Adam Radwan as well has got to be saying, take me on that summer tour and give me a second crack at England. Again, that move away from Steve Diamond and Newcastle, as much as it annoyed him, was the right one. Then on to a bit of a summary of Saints 48, Bristol 31. As far as the Premiership is concerned, Northampton Saints, they push up the table a bit, but a painful one for Bristol as they start to slide down those slots, although still in 4th place. For Northampton, this really was a tune-up for that Leinster match. Hate to say it, but that's pretty much what it was. They get a good win, but Bristol Bears' defence is going to be nothing like Leinster next week, so tricky to compare. But that attack for Saints is really on song. Some really exciting things there for sure. And the good news for Northampton is all of their big players came through unscathed and looked good in this attacking game, as they probably would have really. Mitchell was there with a solo effort to open up with. Pollock always creative, always on hand to support an attack, and Freeman powerful as always, etc. So looking good, but they're just not going to get that time and space against Leinster, but still did what they needed to do with a big bonus point win. And then quite a big review of Gloucester 79, Exeter 17, because this one really says a lot about both sides. Gloucester opening up with so much confidence after a poor game last week, and Exeter actually had a fairly decent game last week and were absolutely terrible. They must be a really frustrating team to follow, because sometimes their attacking shapes look quite nice. They've got lots of young promising players, but goodness me, they were so easy to score against. It was a bit embarrassing, to be honest, or actually quite a lot embarrassing. The first 2 tries, though, were mauls, and they just couldn't defend the maul either. So they couldn't defend the chaotic attack, and they couldn't defend the mauls. It was absolutely awful. Thomas Williams causing havoc. And once Gloucester get in behind you, they're so good and well practiced at just picking you off one by one. It was absolute chaos. And they got that bonus point try after 20 minutes. And that 4th try was a case in point for Exeter, as Dafford Jenkins flies up, but the rest of the defence is all over the place. So they just get picked off as soon as that flying up tackle doesn't make contact, and it's all over. And then their confidence is shot. I don't know if there's enough leaders in the team, but they were ambling back. It was really bad, and they had an interview, I think, with Rob Baxter on about half an hour, and he was just basically giving a whole lecture on how terrible they were playing. And I'm sure at half-time the players got that earful, but it really didn't make much of a difference. Josh Hodge, I guess, was looking fairly quick. He got 1 back before half-time, but really Gloucester just kept on running in the tries. Dafford Jenkins, like I said, has some fight in him and started a couple of fights, but that's really about it. bit until maybe Will Rigg came on in the centres and added some physical threat and scored the last one. So he was looking okay there, maybe in a shout for an England shirt at some point, but a good one for Gloucester to look great. They can fly up the table, and the likes of hooker Seb Blake, the blindside Jack Clement and the centre Seb Atkinson, who got some tries, they all look good and making cases for an England tour. And for Thomas Williams, he looks unbelievable for Gloucester in games like this. Is he going on the Lions tour, though? Because he didn't have a good Six Nations. So, yeah, Gibson Park is going. And then it's, two of Williams, Ben White and Alex Mitchell. That's going to be really interesting. But at least there's 4 strong candidates. So, anyway, that's my summary of round 15. A brilliant one for the Sharks, for Gloucester, as they push their playoff hopes. The Bears and Saracens, they're still in there. It's going to be a really exciting end to the season. And Exeter and Newcastle are just looking pretty hapless, along with Harlequins. Let me know what you thought of those games. Comments down below as always. Do like, do subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll catch you next time.